What they should have done in that crisis is just to stop, close the business, stop the risk. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another bite size in the Highfield Food Safety series. And we're coming up to World Food Safety Day on the 7th of June, and the theme is unexpected events. So, Richard, unexpected events, food safety, what would you be focusing on?
Well, let's look at the biggest potential events would be fires, flooding, and power cuts. And what should we do to prepare for those? Because unfortunately, some businesses are going to experience them. I think the first thing is we must develop a comprehensive emergency plan. The question is for the smaller businesses in particular, medium-sized and perhaps even some large one, who is going to develop that plan? Is there anybody on the site that has the food safety expertise in a smaller business to develop an emergency plan? The larger businesses have hygiene managers and so on. So I think that's, first of all, you need to train up a manager who is then able to look at either developing the plan or getting in consultants if necessary and assessing the competency of those consultants. What should be included? The kind of things that they're going to be looking at would be, what are the staff roles and responsibilities when something drastic happens, like a flood, a fire, or a power cut? The staff need to be trained. So training is an important part. Identifying the training. Emergency procedures and evacuation stand, obviously, things like insurance cover. Safety equipment, making sure you've got the right kind of safety equipment if you've got a fire or something like that. From a food safety point of view, we've got to look at the protocols. The protocols, particularly, you're going to have contamination problems, you're going to have a temperature abuse problems. How are you going to deal with those? How are you going to respond? Do you have a backup power source or equipment? For example, if your power goes out on the refrigerator or the freezer, which it will do at some time, how do you deal with that? Do you have a backup, a spare refrigerator? Do you have a backup vehicle that you can call in to put your frozen food and your refrigerated food in? So those are the kind of things. Effective communication to the staff is also very important, and to emergency support, including enforcement officers. And finally, I'd say let's look at the reviewing, updating, and testing the plans to make sure that they all work. So those are the things I'd say in a nutshell regarding to major incidents. What's your view, Sterling?
Well, as you know, I've worked for some of the biggest food businesses in the world. I've worked for the world's biggest food business brand. I've worked in manufacturing, and I've worked with a big retailer. And what you're saying really resonates with me about, how do you deal with a crisis? But I do wonder a lot about the problems that you get with small businesses. That if you're only in a restaurant and you've only got like 5 people in the restaurant, it's a lot more difficult. And in my experience, those people seem to almost react. So if something goes wrong, they're very reactive. They're not as proactive as a bigger business because they can't make the investment in it. But I think the good thing I would say to any smaller businesses, don't wait till you're in a crisis until you start coming up with a crisis plan of your actions. I think the basic thing I would say is, think about it now, like you said, Richard. If some of these things happen to you, you have a crisis, whatever form it takes, what are you going to do about it? And sometimes the first thing you can do, in my mind, is, can I still make safe food? It's the first question for me. So if you're sitting there and say, I'm in a crisis, and because of this, I can't make safe food. I know your electricity goes and your refrigeration's out. Or I think the thing for me is to say, well, stop. You might want to close the business for a short period of time until you can deal with the crisis. Whereas I think when things go wrong, people find themselves in a crisis and still keep trying to carry on a business. Richard, we were talking earlier about a bakery recently that had a massive pest infestation. What they should have done in that crisis is just to stop, close the business, stop the risk. And then their crisis management system would have come in. Well, what do I do about this? Oh, I'll get a professional in, I'll get a pest control contractor in, I'll get rid of the problem, get it assessed while I'm safe to open. So I think that, Richard, the key thing for me is knowing when to stop serving food. What do you think of that?
No, I agree. I agree entirely. That's and I think that uh, if you've got a serious risk of contamination, then obviously your plan is going to say stop serving food. End of story. The thing is, you can have various degrees of crises, and you need to be able to respond to the various levels. Sometimes it will be, as you said, closure. Other times it will be managing by bringing in systems and protocols that you've thought through thoroughly and can guarantee that you can continue to deliver and serve safe food.
Yeah, I think it's called cognitive dissonance. It's the technical term for it, Richard, where you know that you're doing something wrong, but there's a reason that you don't do the right thing. And I've seen that happen so many times in food businesses where they get themselves in a jam because they almost can't see that they're in a crisis, and their instinct is to keep the business going rather than to take a pause and thinking, well, what should I be doing? It's a bit like there's a Japanese phrase about a frog. I don't know if you've heard it, Richard. If you get a frog and you drop it into boiling water, it jumps out and survives. It knows there's something wrong. If you put a frog in water and you slowly turn the heat up, you actually end up boiling the frog to death because it doesn't realize it's changing. And I think crises are like that. If you find yourself in hot water, recognize it and jump out, and sometimes if a crisis develops over a period of time, you can find yourself in a really bad position without even knowing it.
Okay. Right, Sterling, that's it for that one. Yeah, I'm sure Jess will be able to edit it out and edit it to time. Can we do the 50% of staff don't turn up to work as a crisis?
I have only got 2 minutes now. I have got another meeting I have to go to. It's a CIA. Okay, do you want me to ask it? Run it, Jess. Okay. Yes, run it.
Yep, go.
Hi, everyone, and a very warm welcome to one of the Highfield Food Safety Bite Sizes. I'm joined today by Richard Sprenger. It's coming up to, as we know, World Food Safety Day, and Richard's been thinking about training and staff. Richard, one of the things you always wonder about, isn't it, I know, is, well, what happens if you lose a large section of your staff? Either they've gone down with food poisoning, God forbid, or there's flu, or there's people taking holidays. What would you do if you find that yourself in that position where only half your staff turn up to work one day?
Yeah, it's a serious situation in many respects, and the common answer would be close the business. But that's not going to happen with the vast majority of businesses. A lot of them can't afford to close. So the question is, do you have a plan, a contingency plan, a response plan for dealing with the situation when too few staff turn up? Do you know where to get temporary trained staff as quickly as possible? Maybe 2 or 3 hours before you can get somebody, but have you that details of trained temporary staff that are available at relatively short notice in the plan? You then need to assess the critical roles for staff, prioritize the tasks based on safety. That's very important. So, for example, you're going to be cleaning work surfaces, not necessarily cleaning floors, just for argument's sake. You've got to make sure food preparation, the temperatures and everything are okay, that there's no cross-contamination, but the place may not be as tidy as you'd like it, and so on. You're going to redistribute the workload to different staff because some of the staff will have specialist skills, which means that if you're going to continue, you should have pre-trained staff so people can cover for each other. So that's important, getting ready for it. You might want to adjust the hours of operation. So although you do decide to stay open, you don't open for as long. That's another possibility. And the other thing, don't forget to communicate to the customers. Let the customers know if you are changing your hours of operation. Most businesses now going to have websites and things like that. So put the information on that. And I think finally, my thoughts are reinforce the essential hygiene protocols. Make sure you've got a manager in there that fully understands food safety, trained to at least level 3. I always say the manager in charge of food safety, that person needs to monitor things very carefully, monitor what staff are doing, make sure that you concentrate on the priorities, those things that could be a serious risk. Deal with those, and then hopefully by the time the temporary staff that you've employed will come, and they will be able to be fit in and carry on the business as normal. What do you feel, Stan? What would you say?
I think the biggest challenge for the food sector, hospitality and manufacturing, is attracting talent, attracting staff. Certainly hospitality in the UK has a major problem, is it just can't get people anymore. So in fact, we're living through this crisis at the moment. Is a lot of restaurants are operating with fewer people than they would like. So how are we going to get these people into our industry, as we're talking about, making sure we have enough staff? So you've got perhaps a crisis, but generally in the background, this kind of problem that we've got, Richard. Any thoughts on how we're going to get people back into hospitality?
I think the only thing, as with any job, it's got to be attractive, it's got to be exciting, and it's got to give you a future. And some people feel passionate about hospitality and the food industry. We just need to provide the conditions and the job that enables them to fulfill their ambitions. You've got to compete with all the other labour markets. So make the job attractive for people. Make sure they've got a future. They've got progression. It's just general. That's all I can think of, Sterling. I'm not sure whether you've got any ideas how we can make the job more attractive. And certainly when you look at all the programs on the television about the cooking programs and so on, there's a lot of interest in it. And, we have celebrity chefs, Ready, Steady, Cook, all sorts of things that are very, very well supported. So there's definitely an interest in it.
I think you're right. There were wise words there, Richard. We live in a competitive world. And then even though the food sector is by far the biggest in employment numbers, within the UK, certainly over 400,000 people in manufacturing, for instance, we do have a problem, I think, in competing with other kind of careers that Generation X and Z are all into at the moment. And you're right, there's a lot of passionate people out there who I'm in awe of, who just love doing it. That's why they're doing it. And there are people who do it for a job. And those people that are doing it for a job, we've got to make it as attractive as we can. And I think that comes out with salaries and working conditions. But thank you very much, Richard, for your thoughts on that about staff. What happens if you have a crisis? And then what happens if you're generally trying to attract staff anyway? Thank you, Richard.
Thanks, Sterling.
How's that? That gives us 3 that we can have a look at?
Yeah, 4.
Good. So
Yep.
I will be in touch for the remaining ones for Food Safety Day, but I'll get the allergen ones cut and sorted.
I think that's the immediate one, I think. And Jess, can I suggest you do it the week before Food Safety Week? If you send it Food Safety Week,
we will do, yeah.
We've still got a long time, but if we can get it out like the Wednesday before, we'll be at the kind of cusp of the way people are looking. If we wait till the Monday, there'll be so much stuff out there, we'll get lost in it all.
Yeah. Perfect.
Jess, I think you'll be able to do this, but I think there may be 1 or 2 of the, particularly one that I did, maybe the introduction wasn't the best, and it may be that you could cut and paste one of the introductions from one that Sterling did, and the same as making sure that we've got one at the end that is suitable. Just check that. But I don't see any reason why you couldn't cut and paste an ending and a beginning, because Sterling does a good job with those. So that's it. And I think the second allergen, I don't know, what were the timings? Of the,
9 minutes for both.
9 minutes for both on the allergens?
Yes.
And what about the Food Safety Day?
7 minutes for the first one and 8 minutes for the second.
Fine. Okay. Well, that's not too bad. Great.
Very good.
Excellent.
Yeah, Yeah, we need an opening slide and a closing slide.
Yeah,
Then
yeah.
There's for more bite-sized information. X, if you want to get more into food safety, here's a link to the site.
Yeah.
Then
I'll start that, no problem.
and I wonder, Jess, just as a question, could we add some music to it? Then when we put a slide up like that, can we just have some background music so that we can leave it up a bit longer?
Yes. No problem.
Yeah. Not while we're speaking.
It might be better.
Yeah, just play the music and don't have us speaking. If we just need to get the right kind of music, though, that's the only thing. Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry,
Okay, then, thanks a lot, Sterling. Okay, we'll see you next week or whenever it is for the cleaning hygiene.
looks really good. I'm looking forward to it. Got a great speaker.
Thanks, then. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Then